Yeah, there's no one else in the room here but me. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava
Kunja Bihari
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari
Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari
Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari
Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari
Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana
Jashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana
Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana
Jashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana
Yamuna Tira Vanachari
Jamuna Tira Vanachari
Yamuna Tira Vanachari
Jamuna Tira Vanachari
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
All right, we have to quiet the Zoom because it's not going to work. There's people here now in the temple who are ready to sing. So thank you very much. You can
Thank
sing,
you, Prabhu.
but don't.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Yeah, okay. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Mr. Pad Paramahansa Padavijikacharya Ashtotar to Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jaya Vishnupad Paramahansa Padadikacharya Ashtotar to Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavina Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Prabhu, Hare Krishna, Hare Bol. We have, the etiquette is we have the separation of the men and the women, and that's the ladies' side. If you could just move over to here. Thank you very much. Okay. All right. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. All right, I always forget. Are we on 14 or 15?
15, Prabhu.
Okay, thanks. Okay. On this 20th day of July 2022 in San Diego, a reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are studying Chapter 5, Karma Yoga, Action in Krishna Consciousness, text number 15, which for most of you is on page 242, but not for you. You have a different book. 246, okay. Text 15. Nadate kasyachit papam nachaiva sukritam vibhuhu ajnane navritam jnanam tena muhyanti jantavaha nadate kasyachit papam nachaiva sukritam vibhuhu ajnane navritam jnanam tena muhyanti jantavaha nadate kasyachit papam nachaiva sukritam vibhuhu ajnane navritam jnanam tena muhyanti jantavaha nadate kasyachit papam nachaiva sukritam vibhuhu ajnane navritam jnanam tena muhyanti jantavaha. Okay, you want to try? Right here. You seem to be doing pretty good. Go ahead, chant. Nadate kasyachit papam nachaiva sakritam vibhuhu ajnane navritam jnanam tena muhyanti jantavaha. Go ahead, Brajamata. Nadate kasyachit papam nachaiva sukritam vibhuhu. All right, let's get that first word right. Ajnane navritam.
When it's a long word, it's very hard for me.
Ajnane navritam. All right. Ajnane navritam jnanam tena muhyanti jantavaha. Anyone online?
Nadate kasyachit papam
Nadate kasyachit papam
nachaiva sukratam vibhaha.
nachaiva sukritam vibhuhu.
Prabhu, can you say this word again?
Which one is that? Oh, the long one?
Yeah.
Ajnane navritam.
Ajnane navritam jnanam
Ajnane navritam jnanam
tena muhyanti jnanatavaha.
tena muhyanti jantavaha. Okay, let me do the synonyms. Na, never. Adate, accepts. Kastichit, anyone's. Papam, sin. Na, nor. Cha, also. Eva, certainly. Sukritam, pious activities. Vibhuhu, the Supreme Lord. Ajnanena, by ignorance. Avritam, covered. Jnanam, knowledge. Tena, by that. Muhyanti, are bewildered. Jantavaha, the living entities. Translation. Nor does the Supreme Lord assume anyone's sinful or pious activities. Embodied beings, however, are bewildered because of the ignorance which covers their real knowledge. Purport. The Sanskrit word vibhu means the Supreme Lord who is full of unlimited knowledge, riches, strength, fame, beauty, and renunciation. He is always satisfied in himself, undisturbed by sinful or pious activities. He does not create a particular situation for any living entity. But the living entity, bewildered by ignorance, desires to be put into certain conditions of life, and thereby his chain of action and reaction begins. A living entity is, by superior nature, full of knowledge. Nevertheless, he is prone to be influenced by ignorance due to his limited power. The Lord is omnipotent, but the living entity is not. The Lord is vibhu, or omniscient, but the living entity is anu, or atomic. Because he is a living soul, he has the capacity to desire by his free will. Such desire is fulfilled only by the omnipotent Lord. And so when the living entity is bewildered in his desires, the Lord allows him to fulfill those desires, but the Lord is never responsible for the actions and reactions of the particular situation which may be desired. Being in a bewildered condition, therefore, the embodied soul identifies himself with the circumstantial material body and becomes subjected to the temporary misery and happiness of life. The Lord is the constant companion of the living entity as Paramatma, or the Supersoul. And therefore he can understand the desires of the individual soul, as one can smell the fragrance of a flower by being near it. Desire is a subtle form of conditioning for the living entity. The Lord fulfills his desire as he deserves. Man proposes and God disposes. The individual is not, therefore, omnipotent in fulfilling his desires. The Lord, however, can fulfill all desires, and the Lord, being neutral to everyone, does not interfere with the desires of the minute, independent living entities. However, when one desires Krishna, the Lord takes special care and encourages one to desire in such a way that one can attain to him and be eternally happy. The Vedic hymns therefore declare, Eshu yeva sadhu karma karyati tam yamebhyo lokebhya unninishate. Eshu eva sadhu karma karyati yam adho ninishate. The Lord engages the living entity in pious activities so that he may be elevated. The Lord engages him in impious activities so that he may go to hell. Kaushitaki Upanishad 3.8. Furthermore, Agyo janta anisho yam atmana sukadukkayohu ishvara prehito gachit swargam vasu vas abram evacha. The living entity is completely dependent in his desires and happiness. By the will of the Supreme, he can go to heaven or hell as a cloud is driven by the air. Therefore, the embodied soul, by his immemorial desire to avoid Krishna consciousness, causes his own bewilderment. Consequently, although he is constitutionally eternal, blissful, and cognizant, due to the littleness of his existence, he forgets his constitutional position of service to the Lord, and is thus entrapped by nescience. And under the spell of ignorance, the living entity claims that the Lord is responsible for his conditional existence. The Vedanta Sutras 2.134 also confirm this. Vaishamya nayagrinye nasapekshatvat tata hi darshayati. The Lord neither hates nor likes anyone, although he appears to. Om jnana timirandasya jnanandana shalakaya chakshu unmilitam mena tasmai shri gurave namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. Okay. So, this verse, as always, is following the previous verse, which said, the embodied spirit, the master of the city of his body, does not create activities, nor does he induce people to act, nor does he create the fruits of action. All this is enacted by the modes of material nature. And present verse, nor does the Supreme Lord assume anyone sinful or pious activities. Embodied beings, however, are bewildered because of the ignorance which covers their real knowledge. So, the problem we have in trying to progress or increase our happiness and decrease our unhappiness, which is a given for every living being, not just human beings, is that we're covered by ignorance concerning who we actually are. And in that bewildered state, we do things that further deepen our ignorance. As we've mentioned before, we've been through so many different incarnations before. It's described Labdva sudurlamamidam bahusambhavante manusham. In the 11th canto, Krishna says that the living being has attained this human form of life after many, many births in other species. Labdva sudurlamamidam bahusambhavante means many births. Then you come to the human form of life. So in each of those successive births, our consciousness is progressively more and more uncovered. You're coming through lower species and plants and all these different things. Gradually, you come to the birds, you come to the aquatics, you come, and you know, and each this is real evolution. It's evolution of your consciousness. The bodies are always there; they're already there. The forms are waiting, the templates. Just like probably compared to different apartments. If you get a better job, then you can move to a better apartment. It's like getting good karma, you know. Whereas if you lose your job and you go down, you have to maybe get on the street. So Krishna has arranged things so that just being in this lower species, you gradually get more uncovered and you get more assets and you move up. Then when you come to the human form, you're still in ignorance. You're still identifying with your particular body that you have, the family you're born into, your race, your name, all of these designations, which are designations of the body, you identify with. This is I am. If you go to the airline counter, you have to show your ID. What's your ID? Well, there's a picture there. That's the first thing. And then you also have got your date of birth. You may have your address. Certainly your nationality is on there, or the American passport, okay, like that. So all of those pertain to the body. And that's, we're encouraged, in other words, we're encouraged at every moment to identify with the body. It's described, the Bhagavatam is amazing, this birth, you know, when someone comes out, it's described that you wake up in the womb after, it describes after 7 months, and then after 10 months you come out. I always wondered about that, 7 months and 10 months. Lunar months. So it's about 6.5 months, and then of course 9 months you come out in the solar months. But every mother knows at a certain point the child is in there, he's kicking, you know, he's awake. Hello. And in fact, Prabhupada mentioned, just like we have in the Bhagavatam, that Prahlad Maharaj received his instructions in the womb. So I remember there was a couple once here. We used to go do a program in North County. And the lady became pregnant, and so I suggested that she play my Bhagavatam tapes to the child. And she did that. And the funny thing is, then the kid took birth, a nice healthy boy I think it was, and she would bring him to the Sunday feast, you know. And I would be leading the kirtan like I always do. And the child, as soon as he heard the voice, he recognized my voice, and he was it works that way. So but for the most part, of course, if you're fortunate enough to be born in a family of devotees, then the child is very fortunate. Prabhupada said, yes, I was fortunate, Parikit is not fortunate. You know, then from the very birth, you're introduced to the deities in the holy name, and so it's a great birth. So, but most people aren't, you know. And the Bhagavatam describes in the 3rd canto, Kapila Dev to his mother. So this child wakes up in the womb, and if he's fortunate, you know, maybe not a devotee, but fortunate, then you'll realize what a mistake you made in not going back to Godhead, and you'll start praying in the womb. Oh Lord, you know, please let me, you know, serve you this lifetime. I promise, you know, like that. And so eventually the child is born, but it's described in the Bhagavatam. But as soon as you take birth, you forget everything. The trauma of birth is such that you can't even speak, right? You got to learn, you know, language. So you're completely helpless. Whatever your parents teach you, whatever your brother teaches you, you know, whatever situation you're in, that's what you pick up. And so you lose that inkling, and you're conditioned. So this description that we just had, that the living entity itself, or himself, the embodied spirit, doesn't create any activity, nor does he induce people to act, nor does he create the fruits of action. So then who's doing it? How's it working? He says it's happening by the modes of nature. All this is enacted by the modes of material nature. But the modes of material nature are under Krishna's control. And Krishna is also the super soul. So just like I myself am not creating any activity. I'm just desiring something. I desire to pick up this water. and this complicated body, which is run by the modes of material nature, it's not me, then that body is reacting. There's a means of the living entity connecting with the body through the nerves, the airs. You maybe read about the life airs and all these different things. So the super soul understands the desire. I mean, sometimes Prabhupada describes the super soul understands every desire. It's completely conscious of our consciousness. So he says, okay, this living entity wants to drink some water. Then the order goes out to the demigods in control of water and control of the body. And the arrangement is made where you can pick up the water and drink the water. And I'm thinking I'm doing it, but really it's being done for me by the modes of nature under the control of the demigods and ultimately the Supreme Lord. But I'm thinking, this is me, I'm doing it. But then we find out that sometimes it doesn't work that way. Like my hand may be paralyzed. I may want as much as I want, but it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. The arm or the hand is a problem then. So what do we do with all this knowledge? So Krishna is not responsible. He's functioning to fulfill our material desires in such a way that ultimately we'll become disappointed and will come in touch with his devotee, come in touch with his book, and understand the real nature of ourselves, and work in such a way that we can escape or be released from the bondage of this material encagement and enter into the world of pure spirit again, where we really are who we look like. In other words, our body is made of pure spirit, just like Krishna's is. It's not that within Krishna's body is a spirit. It's pure spirit. That's a big... There's a verse, Deha Deho Vibhago Yam Neshure Vijate Krichit. For the Ishvara, there is never any instance where there is a Dehi that knows the Deha. A Dehi is the embodied spirit soul. In the 13th chapter, it's very explicit. Kshetra Ga, the knower of the field of the body. But for Krishna, it's not like that. He himself is also the Kshetra Ga of all the embodied beings. But he himself is not the Kshetra Ga of his own body. His own body is pure spirit, eternal, full of knowledge, full of bliss, Satchidananda. So we also have a body like that. We also have our spiritual body. And liberation, as I explained last night, I believe, is to finally graduate or cast away all of these false bodies, false identities that we've had, and to be reborn, if you will, in our real form, our spiritual form that's just suited to facilitate our rasa with Krishna. That's called our Swarup Siddhi, our perfected form, which is our actual form, Swarup. We don't know that. We've lost touch with it. We've completely forgotten it. But because we're living entities, part and parcel of Krishna, we have his qualities and we have that eternal relationship. And our mission in human life is to discover that again, to go through the process of purification so that we're more and more aware of our natural relationship with Krishna. And the basic principle of all of rasas is service, is service to Krishna. Is to understand that that's our natural state, and that will really make us happy. It will relieve us of all miseries, and it will progressively bring us more and more happiness that we're hankering for all the time. When we have that faith, that's real faith. It's Shraddha Shabde Vishwas Kohe Sudha Danashjoy Krishna Bhakti Korle Sarva Karma Katahoy. This is how Lord Chaitanya defined actual faith. Faith is a very strong conviction that just by following the process of Krishna consciousness, sadhana bhakti, moving to bhava bhakti and all these things, that all my desires will be fulfilled. I don't have to do anything else. That it's all, whatever is subsumed in there, and that includes, keeping the body and soul together. It's not that you just, everyone takes sannyas right away. Sthane stita. Lord Brahma, he says, you don't have to, don't do anything radical with your position, but add the process of hearing the pure sound vibration from the pure source. He says, Jnane priyasam udapasya. End all of this mental speculation, trying to figure it out on your own strength, and surrender to the acharya. Jnane udapasya namanta eva jivan san mukaditam. San mukaditam. The sat of sun is the saints. From the blessed lotus mouth of the saints, so many words are coming. Listen to them very carefully. Don't try to figure it out on your own. Find the pure source of knowledge and hear from it. And then you serve those. Asthane sitar. Don't do anything radical. Stay in your own position. Keep working, doing what you're doing. But add this hearing process. Shruti-gatam, the path of hearing. And then serve these words with your body, mind, and voice. Taduvan manobir. Now, how do we do that? Well, with the body, you serve them by understanding the instructions. There's so many instructions. And you try to follow those. With your words, you repeat them. And with your mind, you contemplate. And you think about it, you discuss. You see, Tanuban Manobe. And ultimately, if you follow this process properly, he says you'll be able to conquer the unconquerable Lord. How? By love. That's the only way he's conquered. None of these demons had any chance of conquering him. But Mother Yashoda, she was able to bind him up. She conquered him. Because he loves to be conquered by those who love him. That's the idea. So that's the Krishna is not responsible, for anything bad that happens to us. That's one of the process. What is that prayer? Tatte nukampam susamikshimano bunjana evatnukatam vipakam ridvag vapurve vadadan namaste jivantayo mukti bade sadaya bhak. He's saying that Tate nukampam susamikshimano. One should always see everything as Krishna's mercy. Even when something happens that's unpleasant or that's difficult. We say, oh, Krishna's so kind. It could have been so much worse. Like back in the end of October, last October, I had a serious sprain in my ankle. It's not worth telling the story, but there were certain things about this sprain that really convinced me that it was not just an accident, There was a teaching chant. So I could hardly walk. I couldn't even come to the temple for a few days, I was laid up, I was treating it, I was... there's a certain thing. Rice, rice, the rice principle. You raise it, ice, and compression, and elevation. Yeah, so I was trying to follow that. And, I could hardly walk. So I was saying, okay, let me remember this verse. So when something happens like that, we see, oh, Krishna's so kind, it could have been so much worse. And actually when it happened, immediately I thought like that. Because it was a little ditch that I walked into. It was crazy. I was trying to cross at the wrong spot, and it was the only place in the whole street where there was a little ditch like that. I thought, oh, Krishna planted this. But I looked at it and I said, I could have easily broken my ankle, but I didn't, So I had some friends. Prakash helped me. I was doing my laundry, so he took me back to the laundromat. They finished the laundry for me and took me home. So then gradually, it took a month. Usually I've had sprained ankles that took a few days to heal, but this one took a month. Because I'm older and it was a serious sprain. But I didn't say, Krishna, I've been chanting my rounds for 50 years. I did all this editing work, and now this happens to me. What's going on? It's not like that. You have to see it. Okay, this is a sinful reaction that was due, that was minimized. Could have been so much worse. And so you still have this positive, emotion toward Krishna. Now, if something nice happens, something that is you are able to cure a long disease that you had, and now you're healthy again, whatever. They say, oh, Krishna is so kind. He's giving me more facility to serve him. You see? So in both cases, if something bad happens, you still have this positive feeling. In either case, you still keep your relationship with Krishna. And he says, someone who can actually have this as he goes through life, because life is full of ups and downs, is sure going back to Godhead. Because you're always keeping that positive, relation to Krishna in the mood of service.
Even when we're about to leave the body?
Yes. Even when you're about to leave the body and you're thinking of Krishna, you're thanking of Krishna. Krishna, I can't do any more service with this old body. Just take me now. Please take me. And eventually he does. I've been, for some reason they call me a lot, when they're about to leave. I've had 5 or 6 devotees just in this community where I've come. And there's a gathering, we're all chanting. It's a very auspicious way to leave. I remember, I'll tell you a story. You remember Padmavati? Yeah, yeah. So she was, a strong devotee here. She lived right nearby here all the time. She would always come to my classes. And oftentimes, she was the only one. I said, Padmavati, I can't give class to you alone. There's no one else, there's no internet or anything. You have to find someone else. So she would drag some other lady to come with her. Eventually, we got a few people coming. But she had this COPD. She had this chronic obstructive pulmonary disease because she had joined late and she had been a smoker all her life, So eventually the point came where she called me. She said, I'm going in the hospital. I think this is it. You should come. It was a Kadashi. It was in 2011, in January. And I called Rajendra Nandana. He was in town, and he came with me. And so we went to the hospital, and she was lying there, and the breathing machine and everything. So we started chanting. And who should come in? Ladli and Vrajabadu. You remember how Ladli would take care of Vrajabadu? Yeah, they both came there. Vrajabadu is 95 years old. She had her own health issues, So they came and chanted for a while, and Vrajabadu had to leave, so it was just me and Raj. So Padmavati had also got in touch with her 3 children. She had a daughter and 2 sons who lived in different parts of the country, and they all flew in, so they were there also. So at a certain point, the daughter comes in and she says, okay, this is it, they're she's ready to go, so we're going to pull a plug. She didn't use those words. And I said, it would really be good if we could keep chanting, but they didn't want that. They said, okay, so what are you going to do? So we walked out. It was like we stayed in a little waiting room, like a few, 10, 15 feet away. So after about 15 minutes, one of the sons comes in. And he says, you better come back. We took we unplugged everything, but she's still hanging in there, she's breathing, she's not going, So, and they understood, well, maybe she's waiting for us. So we came back in, we chanted, within 5 minutes, she peacefully left. She left, And were you there with Radhanath Das? You remember Radhanath in the wheelchair? Yeah. And that was another one, I won't tell the story, but that was very auspicious sleeping. Had a big crowd, he was very popular. And same thing with Ojasvi. I don't know if you remember him. So these are auspicious leaving. Devotees get a chance to hear the holy name when you're leaving. And, what could be more auspicious than that? That's the ultimate. So Krishna is not, randomly causing us pain or randomly causing this. There's always a reason for it. We don't understand what it is. Something in our background, something in our karma that Krishna is just eradicating. Because when you become a devotee, Krishna takes personal charge of your karma. Much of it is just eradicated. That's meant in many places. Karmani nirdahati kinchuda bhakti bhajam. This is in the Govinda prayers, Brahma Samhita. And near the end of those prayers, Lord Brahma says, Yastvindra gopam atavendra maho swakarma bandhanurupa palabhajana matanoti. From Lord Indra down to the little germ called the Indra Gopa germ, from Indra down to Indra. Everyone is bound up by his karma. But then he says, Karmani nirdahati kintuta bhakti bhajan. For those who are devotees engaging in bhakti, worshipping bhajan, seriously, then Krishna, Govinda, personally burns them up, burns up all these seeds. These karmas are like seeds. They plant something and nothing happens right away. But in this life or the next life, then it fructifies into a good result or a bad result. So he said, but he burns them all up. The seeds are burned. They won't fructify. This is the great benefit of Krishna consciousness. Because we don't want good karma either, because then you have to come back in order to get it. A good karma, I'll be very rich, very handsome, beautiful, whatever. No, you still have a material body, and you're still entangled. So all of it eradicated. So that's the idea, and that's repeated here quite a few times. That if you're in knowledge, it means that you're also acting according to this transcendental knowledge. You're not incurring any new karma, and you're eradicating previous karma. You're cleansing away. And so when you're free of that bondage, then the path back to Godhead is open. Okay, any questions on this text? Yes? I'm sorry?
Zero karma. No karma.
Zero karma?
No karma.
No.
Hare Krishna, we had a question on the online.
Yeah, okay. But the question, we had one here, but he didn't have the mic. Yeah, the question was, the question was kind of just that, huh? A comment. Yeah. We want no karma. Good or bad. Because the so-called good karma still means we have to get it back here on the material life. You had something? Yeah. Okay, so there's a third mic somewhere, probably in the closet.
On Monday's class, you were talking about not having any karma through actions in devotional service. And you gave that example of like gardening for the temple and how through that action you don't create any binding karma.
Exactly. Naishkamya is a state. Naishkamya.
What my question is, if we're, say I'm like mopping the floor in the temple, I'm engaged in devotional service, but my mind is elsewhere. Does that action still count as non-binding karma, or because my mind is somewhere else, does that play into it?
Well, it's not the best to have your mind elsewhere, obviously. But the essence is, you're mopping the floor. You may not be thinking of Krishna's Leela or Krishna's name. Your mind is the one, but you're still doing the service. So it's not fruitive. It's not like, all right, I'm going to do this and I'm going to get paid so much per hour. You know, I should get more per hour, but you know, it's not like that, right? That's not in your mind. So it's not binding, but it's not the best kind of service that's going to evoke your love for Krishna. It's kind of a state that you want to try to avoid. You want to try to remember Krishna, chant Hare Krishna while you're doing your service. So you're aware of the fact, I'm doing this for Krishna. I'm doing this for Krishna, and remember Krishna, while you're doing it. That's the ideal. So it's in the very auspicious realm of not getting any new karma. But if you do that, eventually you'll say, what am I doing this for anyway? And you'll leave. So controlling the mind, the whole thing is a state of consciousness. This is Krishna consciousness. The activities are meant to help you develop the consciousness. I sometimes tell this. I remember the high points in my devotional life in the early days. This is way back in '73. We had so many devotees in the temple. It wasn't that big the temple we lived in. The whole place was as big as this, but we had many rooms. It was a building in Brooklyn. It's nice Brooklyn temple, New York temple. But there was a lot of devotees packed in there. So we had so many devotees that every morning we'd have a little maha cleanup. Everyone had his little assignment, and so someone did the stairs, someone went upstairs. So my turn that day was the temple room, to mop the floor of the temple room on my hands and knees. It took me maybe 20 minutes. And while I was doing that, the curtains were open. So I was watching, Radha Govinda was watching me, and Yamuna was singing, Govinda Jaya Jaya Gopala Jaya Jaya Radha Ramana. This is the record had just come out, So I'm in a great position here. I've got the deities watching me, and I'm doing this, service. So even though I was, doing a menial service, wasn't getting paid, but I felt this is a great position to be in. So that remembering Krishna while you're doing whatever service you're doing is the ideal, and then you really feel that you're interacting with Krishna. But forgetting him while you're doing it, that's still auspicious. But we don't want to stay on that platform because. Yes, sir. But we need the mic. Can we get the second mic? There's another black mic in there. Yeah, take this one. It'd be convenient. On this side, this side.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Bol.
So my understanding of karma yoga is that you're always doing some karma, right? You're inhaling, exhaling, you're always doing something.
Some activity, yeah.
Activity, right? So at the same time doing karma with bhakti. So in other words, taking care of your family, even cleaning, mopping, anything you do with that service to Krishna, because he's allowing us to do that without much expectation of what the result of that karma is. Isn't that the the goal?
Yes, the Karma Yoga usually emphasizes this. It's Yagyartat kamanonyata lokoyam karma bandhana. This is a verse in the 3rd chapter. And Taratam kama kontiya mukta sangha samacha. Krishna is saying to Arjuna that everything you do should be as a sacrifice for Jagya. Now Jagya there is also identified as for Vishnu. Otherwise, whatever you do is going to be binding here. If it's not a sacrifice for Vishnu, then it's binding. So this is kind of an integral part, if you will, of bhakti, is that you realize I am part and parcel of Krishna. I'm an eternal servant of Krishna. That's my identity. That's the essence of faith. I have faith that that's true. Now I need to be trained in how I can work in that consciousness. How everything I can do can be as a sacrifice and as a service for Vishnu or for Krishna. And so that's why we have all these different activities and programs, morning program and chanting, So in essence, you can say, that Karma Yoga is in this way subsumed within Bhakti Yoga. Some of what we do, it would be hard to find. Well, how is the Kirtan Karma Yoga? It doesn't really compute so much. But when we're doing an activity, especially like you say, you mentioned the family, how you can within family life. You can create an atmosphere where Krishna's in the center. There's like there's a temple or a deity in a home, and you're offering everything. And there's a way of doing it so that you keep Krishna in the center, and you're feeling, yes, we're raising our children in the most auspicious way, giving them the best they can get. They're learning to read and everything, but they're also learning how to serve Krishna and how to chant. And like there's this family. I think they're going to be moving back to India, Gaur Keshava. They have a wife and his wife and 2 children. I visited their place several times, did a program there. When Jayawada Swami was here, we both went to visit him. And he's got this beautiful altar. His son is playing pretty good, the Mridanga already, and his older daughter is already chanting verses from Bhagavad Gita, that type of thing. And it's a blissful atmosphere. And they're, in the pandemic, they kept them home. They were learning their lessons there and everything, But I've seen many families like that because I visit Alachua a lot of times, So yes, it's possible to do that. And when you look at the history of our sampradaya, Lord Chaitanya, most of his followers were householders. It's not that they were all sannyasis and brahmacharis, The majority were householders. But they were very centered on service to Krishna, and you raise the children. It's difficult in this age. There's so many influences coming from outside. It's hard, but it's possible to do it. And therefore, that's also really important bhakti, because it makes it possible for the vast mass of people to actually participate. A few of us fanatics, become brahmacharis and sannyasis. All right, let's go on.
Prabhu, we have a question online.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Okay. So question is from Jonajivan Prabhu. He is asking, when the Guru gives us a spiritual name, is that who we are spiritually, our Sharupa?
Generally not. It's a it's a new identity. And it's always das or dasi. It's always you're so and so das. In other words, it emphasizes the fact what it does is it gives you a sense of a new identity, that you're passing out of that old illusory identity, which is based on your mother's favorite name or whatever. But this name is giving you an identity in relation to Krishna. Krishna, we've had Krishna Dasas or Govinda Dasis and Dasis. So, but it doesn't necessarily mean that this is your Sarup. That Prabhupada never taught us that. That will come later, over hopefully in this lifetime, by your sadhana bhakti and your advancement, so that it'll be revealed to you. But generally, we don't find that that's. Prabhupada never said that this is necessarily your Sarup siddhi. You know, it's a name that calls to mind Krishna, and that you are known by, and you can remember, oh, this is who I am now. This is so and so Das. I am Gopinath Das, or whatever it may be. So that's the answer to that. In my understanding. I mean, my name, Dravida Das, that's not a name of Krishna. Dravida. Dravida is a name for South India, where a lot of our acharyas appeared. Dravida Desh. So, you know, I'm not complaining, but I'm assuming I'll get another name if I become a coward boyfriend. I'll have some other name. We'll see how it works out. Okay, I'm going to go on. Text 16. Or did we read text 16? No, we did only one verse so far. Jnanena tutara jnanam yesham nashitam atmanaha tesham aditya jnanam prakashayati tatparam. Okay, now he's going to be praising knowledge. When, however, one is enlightened with the knowledge by which nescience is destroyed, then his knowledge reveals everything as the sun lights up everything in the daytime. So we're going to have darshan at 8:15? 8:15? Yeah, about 10 minutes. You're welcome to sit, or whatever you like. Those who have forgotten Krishna must certainly be bewildered, but those who are in Krishna consciousness are not bewildered at all. It is stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Sarvam Jnana Plavena, Jnanagni Savakarmani, and Nahi Jnanendra Sadrusham. Knowledge is always highly esteemed. And what is that knowledge? Perfect knowledge is achieved when one surrenders unto Krishna, as is said in the 7th chapter, 19th verse, Bahonam janmanamante jnanavan mam papadyate. After passing through many, many births, when one perfect in knowledge surrenders unto Krishna, or when one attains Krishna consciousness, then everything is revealed to him as everything is revealed by the sun in the daytime. The living entity is bewildered in so many ways. For instance, when he unceremoniously thinks himself God, he actually falls into the last snare of nescience. If a living entity is God, then how can he become bewildered by nescience? Does God become bewildered by nescience? If so, then nescience, or Satan, is greater than God. Real knowledge can be obtained from a person who is in perfect Krishna consciousness. Therefore, one has to seek out such a bona fide spiritual master, and under him learn what Krishna consciousness is. For Krishna consciousness will certainly drive away all nescience, as the sun drives away darkness. Even though a person may be in full knowledge that he is not this body, but is transcendental to the body, he still may not be able to discriminate between the soul and the supersoul. However, he can know everything well if he cares to take shelter of the perfect bona fide Krishna conscious spiritual master. One can know God and one's relationship with God only when one actually meets a representative of God. A representative of God can never claims that he is God, although he is paid all the respect ordinarily paid to God because he has knowledge of God. One has to learn the distinction between God and the living entity. Lord Sri Krishna, therefore, stated in the 2nd chapter, 2:12, that every living being is individual and that the Lord also is individual. They were all individuals in the past, they are individuals at present, and they will continue to be individuals in the future, even after liberation. At night, we see everything as one in the darkness, but in the daytime, when the sun is up, we see everything in its real identity. Identity with individuality in spiritual life is real knowledge. So this is the praising of the knowledge that comes by service to Krishna. As he says in the 10th chapter, Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogatam yena mamapiyandite. This is one of the 4 main verses of the Bhagavad Gita. This was 10:11. So what does he say there? He says, for those who understand that I am the source of everything, aham sarvasya bhavavo, then what's their response? It says they worship me with all their hearts. So what do? Bhagavad Gita class. Machita margata prana bodhayantak parasparam katayantastamam nityam tushanti chadamanticha. They put their minds on me, they dedicate their lives to me, and they gather together and glorify me. And in this way they feel transcendental bliss. Tushanti chadamanticha. To them who are doing this, Tesham, always linked to me by this glorification and service, I give the intelligence by which they can come to me. After all, he's in the heart. He's in our hearts. And then he says, out of my compassion for them, Tesham eva nakampartam mahama jnana jamtamahan nashiyam yapta bhavasto jnana dipena vasata. Out of compassion for them, I, dwelling in their hearts, destroy with the shining lamp of knowledge the darkness born of ignorance. So this is what's being described here. That this knowledge is actually dormant within us. It just has to be brought out by the process of purification known as bhakti yoga, sadhana bhakti. So then when that enlightenment comes, the knowledge reveals everything as the sun lights up everything in the daytime. So this is the sun, the holy name is also described as the sun in several verses. Because we shall remember that Krishna and his name are non-different. So if we really take shelter of that holy name and become proficient in chanting and with attention and devotion and concentration, then that also will give us enlightenment. There's several verses I'll share with you. One is the verse that Haridas Thakur spoke on. Anghak sanghadatakilang sakadadiya deva sakalalokasya tadaniti vatamila jalading jayachitagam mangalang hare nama. And then he gives an explanation of it. I took the explanation in the verse itself. I made a little poem out of it. When the moon is invisible, with it a nil, and the sun is long gone from the sky, then you have to, the modern life, of course, then the lights are turned on. But now there's no lights, there's no electricity. You're back in the 1500s. So a lot of darkness. When the moon is invisible, with it a nil, it's a new moon, and the sun is long gone from the sky, then an ocean of darkness envelops this world, and the timorous fear they might die. But that thick pall of gloom is at once swept away when the first signs of sunrise appear, and the dawning of day gives assurance to all that in truth there is nothing to fear. In a similar way, when illusion holds sway and the soul has forgotten his Lord, then the darkness of ignorance covers his heart. Sin and suffering are his reward. But as soon as he sings, or as soon as he says Krishna's name even once, in a manner that doesn't offend, then his ignorance flees like the darkness at dawn, and his sin and his suffering end. So there's nothing to fear. For the sun of the name has appeared with his powers divine. In your heart may that sun, benedictive for all, become fixed and eternally shine. So, that's Haridas Thakur speaking. And Rupa Goswami also describes it in his Namashtaka. I won't give you the long verse, but it's just like that. That we've been in darkness so long, we don't even know what light is. But when the ignorance cloud is dismissed or is dispelled by the power of Krishna consciousness, beginning with the chanting, then the knowledge naturally comes and it's confirmed from outside. What Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita says, yes, that makes complete sense now. Now I can see why that's true. But so that's part of Krishna consciousness, of seeing through the eyes of Scripture and how the whole world is actually working that way. It makes complete sense. It doesn't make complete sense that everything came about from dull matter, that there's no intelligence behind it. That's the craziest thing we ever heard. It just doesn't make any sense. But it does make complete sense that there's a supreme intelligence, and that everything we see has been arranged by that supreme intelligence, and we're a part and parcel of it. We have that relation. So we should try to take that seriously and practice very carefully. And then we'll experience the benefits that are going to be described for the rest of this chapter. Okay, so it's 8:11 now. So we'll convene again on Monday, and we'll see you guys on next Wednesday. Okay, Hare Krishna. And you're all welcome every day, either online or personally. All glory to Srila Prabhupada.